To go ahead and get started for our time this afternoon. Thank you for those who are joining. And as a note, this session is being recorded and a link will be provided to anyone and everyone who registered as a part of our intentional hope that this will get even beyond this audience today. My name is Amy Dominguez. I'm the Director of Disaster Services here at Vibrant Emotional Health. And for those who may not know, Vibrant is most commonly known for our facilitation of an administration of 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, as well as the Disaster Distress Helpline and some other important support lines in our country. We also have been operating in a supportive role in disaster services. So whenever there is an event like what we have just walked through in Texas, our team, which is comprised of subject matter experts and cadre members from across the country, provide different types of support, which include trainings like this, in-person support, consultation, and care. And we are really grateful that Julia Yeary and Dr. Robin Gerwich have agreed to share some time with us today on an important topic that I think is very much top of mind for many of us as we think through what these events have meant. So we can move to the next slide. And just for introductory purposes, again, Dr. Robin Gerwich is a clinical psychologist and an emeritus professor at Duke University School of Medicine. We will include links to full bios and CVs because both these amazing women have resumes that are longer than I think anybody would want to sit through today. But the commonality with both of them is that they have committed to the support of children and families when facing traumatic events of lots of various types and have had long history in helping to shape best practices in how we as care providers, as community members, as leaders can ensure effective and intentional compassion and care that builds our amazing kids towards resilience and hope. So with that, we can go to the next slide. I want to just talk about the three kind of objectives of today. And I'll note that Lindsay has posted, if for those of you that are interested in the CEUs available for this session, there is a pre-test that needs to be taken, and there will also be a post-test in order to qualify for that. But we want you to walk away today with three strategies to provide emotional care to families with children after a disaster. Describe the three parts of pause, reset, and nourish, and then offer the definition of short sadness span in young children. We can move to the next slide. And again, just for logistics purposes, we will ensure that all of the steps are taken place so that you do receive your CEUs for today. I'd like to start us with a grounding exercise, though, because this topic, as we know, is quite heavy and it has been a lot. If you're like me and you're paying attention to the news and our current environment, there is a lot of heaviness. So I would like to ground us a little bit together. You showing up in this space means that you are a compassionate and caring person who wants to be effective in the care of others. And I want to honor that and thank you for that. And I want to do a breath together, some breathing together to kind of get us ready to receive this information. So we'll do what's called a box breathing. It'll be to the count of 4. You'll inhale for 4 breaths, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4. The first one, I will prompt you on the counts. I'll guide you through them. The last 3, though, I'd like for you to be reflecting on 3 specific things. One will be something today that brought you joy. Could be that early morning coffee, a relationship connection that perhaps you had. The second one, I'd like you to be reflecting on a hope that you have for yourself or someone in your life. And you'll breathe in and hold that hope and exhale the expectation that it will be realized. And then the final breath, I actually just want you to keep your brain and mind empty. So as you breathe in, clear everything and exhale all of that stress and all of that angst that may be in your body currently. So, with that, you can feel free to close your eyes, place your hand on your heart and also on your abdomen. And we're going to breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3. Now, gratitude. Inhale and hold. Exhale and hold. Now, hope. Inhale and hold. Exhale and hold. And the final one, inhale, hold, exhale, and hold. As you open your eyes and reset, just be aware of your body, where your feet are on the ground, where your shoulders are. Maybe roll them back a little bit, do a little shake to relieve some stress. And with that, I will pass our presentation to our amazing panelists today. So Dr. Gerwich and Julia, over to you.
Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you, Vibrant, for hosting this just-in-time training. Thank you, all of you who are joining today, because joining, as Amy said earlier, just testifies to your heart, your compassion, your hope, and your desire to do more for your community. So thank you so much for that. One of the things I wanted to just start off by saying is to remind you that this is a really tough topic. And I know that it's been very difficult for those experiencing this disaster in Texas, whether it is just through media or if you were boots on the ground, or if you have someone that you know that was directly impacted. It is emotionally very tough. So I'm going to invite you to make sure that you take care of yourself today. So if you need to pause and step away for a little while, remember this is being recorded. You can come back. If you have questions, jot them down so you won't forget, because sometimes when we are feeling a lot of stress, we forget things. And by jotting them down, you'll be able to trigger your memory a little bit more. And just take the time you need to take care of yourself as we go through this information. Now, we are going through a lot of information quickly. Each of these could be a course by itself. And so I invite you to take in and feel free to use the chat if you have additional questions. And we're going to make sure we have time at the end for questions. Next slide, please. I wanted to start off by really stressing to everyone one of the common mistakes for people who are not used to working with very young children. I'm talking about children 0 to 3 or even 0 to 5. Is they think that, well, it doesn't matter if a young child is exposed to something traumatic because they won't remember. And we frequently hear that, oh, they're young, they won't remember. It's a good thing that they were so young because they'll never remember that this happened. But what we do know is traumatic events do impact a young child, even as young as an infant, their sense of safety and well-being. We know that implicit memories are stored into our bodies no matter what our age is. So even infants can be storing up these memories of something going on. And you can see it later on act out in different ways through their behavior, through the way they see the world, the way they organize their thoughts about the world. So implicit memories are those memories where we might not be able to put words to. Like, for instance, oh, when I walk by bakeries and I smell that certain bread smell, and I could just, some of you right now are thinking about bread and the last time you've had really good bread, and all of the memories that comes from home dinners when my mom would make something with bread, and it just stirs up memories. And those memories come automatically. It's not something that I think about or I tell a story about. It's just reactions in my body. And so that's how little children store information, whether they're good things or maybe more difficult things. They store them in their body. We also know that young children do take their cues frequently from from their caregivers, especially their primary caregivers. Now, I do want to just kind of help you know that today I might switch from caregivers to parents and back again. And what I mean are those loving people in a child's life who are there to support them on a daily basis and provide the nurturing care that they need on a daily basis, and who love them unconditionally. Okay, so that's what I'm going to use. And you'll hear me say parents, you'll hear me say caregivers, and I mean both when I use that word. Okay, next slide, please, Lindsay. Um, we know that um, very young children who experience a traumatic event, the majority of them actually recover. They're very resilient and they do very well. And part of this comes from the secure attached relationship they have with their primary caregivers. Again, that consistency, that person who's their nurturer, their person who organizes their schedule, the person who tells them they're okay and kisses their boo-boos. That person, that relationship, that back and forth that they receive from that person is so critically important in helping young children through a traumatic event. Um, what the studies say, and you can go to the Harvard Center on the Developing Child to get more information on this if you're interested, about attachment and secure attachment, is that secure attachments, when children have this consistency from their caregivers, that it really helps to buffer them when something negative happens. Now, not all children have secure attachments. Some children have attachments that are more intermittent, and sometimes children don't always feel the most secure. Perhaps they have parents or caregivers who are struggling with issues. They might have more difficulty getting through a traumatic event, such as the floods that just occurred. So we really want to, when we work with families, we want to kind of not necessarily ask, do you have a secure attachment? But that's something we're looking for. We're looking to see what kind of support does that young child have from the caregivers in their life to know how much support that young child's going to need as we help them get through this. We know that young children who experience trauma, that they process their world and make sense of their world by using play. And it's something that all children do. And it's interesting. I have a grandson, and he was coming for his first big trip on an airplane to come visit his grandma and grandpa. And so he would play traveling to get here. He would get on a playground, and there'd be a wheel, and he'd say he was driving to grandpa's house, that he would pretend he was fishing. And all of this was play to get ready for this travel that he heard that he was going to be able to do. And then now that he's done the trip and he's back home, he's continuing to play and think about what he did through his play. You'll see the same thing when children have experienced trauma, as you'll see them playing and trying to make sense of what happens through their play. Sometimes you might see play that where the children are more aggressive in their play, or that in this case, you might see them talking about knocking down buildings and talking about the big flood if they actually witnessed the flood or if they saw it on TV. So this is something that they're trying to make sense of through their play. And we don't want to like cut it off and say, oh, don't play that, don't do that. What we want to say is, oh, looks like that was big and scary and it knocked the building down. I bet you the little boys and girls that are there, that they were a little scared. So you help to give words to the child for what they're processing, because very young children don't have the language yet. So the more that we can help explain what the child may be feeling using words and our tone, it will help them to make sense of what they're going through. And this kind of play, processing through play, may happen for quite a while. It's not a one and done. They play it out once and they're done. It may take time. And some of that length of time depends on who the child is, their temperament, what they witnessed, what kind of loss they experienced, what kind of trauma they experienced, and their degree of separation from the experience. Another thing that I think is really important for people to understand about very young children is what some clinicians call a short sadness span. Um, the short sadness span, when I first heard, I'm going, what are they talking about, sadness span? What does that mean? And the reality is that it was first described by Wolfenstein in 1966. And what he noticed is that young children who experience adversity frequently they don't sustain. You know how grown-ups like to put a black band on our arm and mourn and be sad. Little kids can't sustain that. They just cannot. And so you will see them play and laugh and giggle, and then they may dysregulate for a period of time by freezing. Maybe they'll withdraw to a corner, or hide under a blanket or crawl under a table. Or they might show some aggression. Maybe they're rough with their toys, or they hit or kick their siblings. And then they return to playing again like nothing's wrong, and laughing and giggling and having a good time. Kids who are old enough with language might have questions about what happened. And then they'll go back to, and you go, are they even bothered by this? Because they look normal, they're just playing. That is how kids process trauma. And so one of the things we want to help the adults who are caring for that child understand is that they will see their child move in and out of processing this trauma through this short sadness span. And that don't be fooled by the fact that they go back to playing. What you want to look for is those changes in their behavior, periods where they're dysregulated, and seeing what that is all about to know how the child is doing with adjusting to the trauma experience, the traumatic experience. Next slide, please. I think that what you'll see when you're looking at children, the biggest one people talk about is a regression in behavior. So a child who is potty trained all of a sudden will start to have pottying accidents, or a child who was off a bottle starts insisting that they want the bottle again, or they want their mother's breast again. Or a child who is able to sleep alone through a solid bedtime routine, all of a sudden puts up a fuss about that and wants to have their caregiver right there with them. This regression in behavior is very normal for children who've experienced some trauma. We also see changes not just in sleeping, but also in feeding patterns. Perhaps they want to feed more, or they don't want to feed. And I use feeding because sometimes it has to do with the relationship during the process when they take in nourishment, whether it's bottle fed. You can see young children who are breastfed or bottle fed actually rejecting it for a while, because that's the way they show they're dysregulated. So you want to look for that as they're changing that feeding pattern. You might see excessive crying, which I think we all expect when a child is going through any kind of major upset in their life. But you also see anxiety or fear or anger or hyperactivity. You might see a magnification of normal developmental fears as well. So, about 9 months, young children frequently show a separation anxiety from their parent, or stranger anxiety around year and a half. Those may be just kind of magnified, where all of a sudden they won't let their parent out of their sight without having a meltdown. My daughter did that. My husband left on a military deployment when she was a year and a half. And for about 4 weeks, whenever I tried to leave her sight, she just fell apart. And so you can imagine, if someone is in the hospital because they were injured, or if there was a loss of life of someone who was a prime caregiver, how that can increase even those fears even more. We'll talk about death more in a minute, but just to kind of drive this point home, it's a normal fear to lose your caregiver in this period. And so if a loss of a parent or a caregiver comes during this period, again, what does that mean about the safety of my other caregiver? Will I lose them too? And that you see that played out in children as they try to find resolution and find their resilience, is like, what does this mean for my safety? You'll see them withdrawing by hiding or getting quiet. Child who normally is kind of willing to jump into the play is all of us sitting back and just observing or literally hiding. That happens. And you also can see children who've gone and are in a grief process, um, playing, laughing, running, climbing, normal childhood behavior. So we have to kind of really use our observation skills to pay attention because, again, especially as they move in and out of their grieving process, we want to pay attention and be able to really be there for them. Next slide, please. Um, I think what we can tell both those who are trying to work with a young child as well as and especially their caregivers of those children is that how you are matters because children are emotional sponges. They will pick up on all the emotions of those who care for them. It is quite clear that they even look those, especially those who have this caring, loving back and forth relationship with their parent, you will see them look, how am I supposed to feel about this? What's going on here? Is this okay? Is this a safe place? They look to their caregivers. And if they look to their caregiver and their caregiver is having a hard time staying regulated, it can add to the child having difficulty processing what they're experiencing. Now, I want to be clear that does not mean a caregiver cannot cry, cannot experience their emotions, but there's a difference between experiencing emotions and becoming dysregulated. So I can cry and be sad, and when my child says, Mommy, why are you crying? I can say, sweetheart, it's because I'm really sad because grandpa died, as we talked about earlier, and I'm just missing him. So I'm very sad. And my child say, oh, um, and give me a hug. And that's okay, as long as it's not consistent, that I also are able to say, you know what? I think mommy needs to do something to help her feel a little bit better. I think I'm going to color. You want to join me in coloring? And I get out my crayons and my paper and I start coloring and we can color together. So it's okay for me to have those emotional experiences. But the dysregulation part is when I am so involved in it that I cannot see what my child is experiencing, then that becomes problematic for that child. And I might want to get extra support from me so that I can regulate myself enough so that I can see my child and observe my child and respond to my child's needs. Hopefully that makes sense when I'm talking about how you are. So when we're assisting a child who's having some strong emotional responses to a traumatic event, what I encourage a caregiver to do is to start with themselves. Again, regulating myself. Again, if I'm sad, acknowledge that I'm sad, maybe even let people around me know that I'm sad, but check myself, make sure that my emotions aren't spilling out and where I'm ignoring the people around me, but I'm aware of the child. And then I want to carefully observe the child. Okay. What is normal for the child? What is not normal? What is the child doing? One of the tough parts about it is sometimes we react to our children. So a child might start throwing their toys, and we go, Samantha, I told you you can't throw your toys. Don't, do I have to take that ball away from you? And they're throwing their toys, right? And so we're reacting to the behavior. But if we understand what has happened and we know that throwing toys is not something this child normally does, and now the child's throwing toys, maybe something's going on. Maybe I need to check in and observe the child to see what's happening for them. And I have to kind of be a little bit of a feelings detective. I want to try and figure out what is that behavior telling me, because the behavior is the way young children communicate. It's through their behavior. So how can we switch the gears so that we can say, hey, I see you throwing something. I know you know that's not okay to do in the house. What can I do? I'm wondering what you're feeling. Am I basically not paying attention to you enough? Are you feeling like I'm ignoring you? I'm so sorry. I know I've been so sad. come, let's play together. Why don't you show me what you want to play? Do you want to throw things? We can go outside and throw things. That's okay. We just can't throw them in the house, but we can go outside and throw things if you want. Or do you want to tell me what you're feeling? Are you feeling mad too? And that's why you're throwing your things. So you try and guess what the child is feeling as you're carefully observing that child. And based on what you know about the child, you form that hypothesis. And you're responding to the feelings that you think the child has more so than the behavior. I'm not saying you don't respond to stopping negative behavior. You still want to make sure that there's limits on the child, the behaviors that are not okay to do, like hitting and kicking others or breaking things. That's never going to be okay. But what you say is, this is what you can do to show, to talk about your feelings. This is what you can do. So you're noticing your child and you're really working to give your child words to explain what they're feeling rather than responding to just correcting the behavior. You're trying to look at what that feeling is underneath. The next slide, please. So one of the things that we know is children who've experienced trauma will actually need more support, extra there, because their emotions are probably magnified. They aren't always able to ask for these things in the way an older child may be able to, or the way an adult may be able to. But I'll tell you right now, I know a lot of adults who can't say, I'm really sad. Can I have a hug? They have a hard time saying that. Or, you know what? When my mom died, I had a hard time going to the grocery store because that was an activity I did with my mom, go to the grocery store all the time. And so every time I went to the grocery store, I found myself wanting to cry. And so I shared that with my husband. So he went to the grocery store with me to give me support. Great. I'm an adult. I can do that. And I have high skills because I'm a social worker that I can do that. But I know a lot of people who don't have the ability to recognize that in themselves. So we need to make sure we take the time to help our little ones with this because it's a developing skill for them. And even grown-ups I know can't do it. Instead, we want to help them when we notice them, when we notice they maybe are having a tough time, when they're whiny, and our instinct is to say, don't whine, it's making me crazy. You say, you know what? It sounds like you're needing some extra holding. Come here, let grandma hold you for a minute. Okay. Or you're worried that Superman is in your closet and that a Batman is in your closet. You know what? Mama's going to take your Superman doll and I'm going to go look in the closet with Superman and he's going to help me to make sure there's nothing in your closet so you don't have to worry. So I can support that child and help them feel heard, help them feel safe, right? Those are the goals, that the child feels heard and that the child feels safe. So in giving this extra attention, extra reassurance, hopefully we're helping them when they have these behaviors that may not feel normal to them, of feeling extra anger or extra confusion. You know, are you angry right now because you loved your puppy very much and your puppy disappeared in the storm and now you're very angry that your puppy's not here. And remember, losses for young children can include so much: loss of the home, loss of pets, loss of family members, loss of feeling safe in certain places. So these are things that we want to address and give extra assurance to kids rather than saying, oh, grow up, you'll be fine. You never had a problem with this before. Instead, we're going, you know what? If you need an extra hug, come here, I'll give you an extra hug. You want me to hold you while we do this? I know you're strong enough to get through this, but I want you to know that I'm here to support you, to keep you safe. Next slide, please. I think one of the things that the way we can use language to talk to our children is very important. And we want to use that safety language as much as we can. The safety language are things like, for instance, for a child who's personally experienced danger, perhaps it might be something like the water was very high and we had to get in a boat to escape it. And that was really scary. But now we're safe and we're here. Uh, Mommy and daddy are here to keep you safe. We're going to keep you safe. When perhaps a parent has been in a dangerous situation, maybe they're helping with the search and rescue, to say, we were worried about daddy or about mommy or grandpa or whoever, because he was out in the big storm, in the big waters, and it was so scary. The water was so rough, but he's safe now. And we are here and we are all going to keep you safe. So that language of safety, that language of we're here, we are um, the grown-ups in the room that are going to help you to stay safe is so important. And even when there has been a loss. So we're so sad that grandpa died in the rough waters in the river. This isn't something that happens very often, and grandpa couldn't get out of the water in time. But we want you to know that you're safe and that we know how to keep you safe. And we're going to work now to make sure that you stay safe. So again, that language of safety, the more we can come back to that, the better it is for the young child to hear. So when we think about when there's a death of a loved one, um, I think that there's a couple resources that I want to really point you to. One is a great kind of standard textbook, Losing to Parent to Death in the Early Years. Let's see if I can get this in focus. Written by a whole bunch of people, but Alicia Lieberman is the lead author. But it just kind of walks you through to kind of help support young children who've experienced death of a caregiver. Also on the 0 to 3 website, there's a great resource on discussing death with your young child. So that I advise that that's a great place for you to go. And a couple of things is, one is to provide accurate, honest information to your child. Even at the very young children, even if they're pre-verbal, again, you want to use language to help explain what happened for the child. You want to use straightforward language. It's interesting, children are quite literal. So if you say, grandpa went to sleep, a child might say, I can't go to sleep because I might disappear, and I don't want my mama to go to sleep because she might disappear just like grandpa did. So you want to be careful what kind of language you use, like passed away. Another one is went to a better place. I know a child where the caregivers told the child that the child went to heaven. And the child says, well, when can I go? I want to go too. Because to them, that didn't mean death. And so really helping to make sure a young child understands that your body died and it doesn't work anymore. And then if you have religious beliefs, if you're supporting someone who has that, I encourage you to find out from those primary caregivers what their beliefs are, and then use their language and reinforce their beliefs, whatever their beliefs are, so that the child hears that consistently, making sure that they're understanding what death is. And there's some great books in this PowerPoint. You'll see there are some suggested books, including ones on explaining what is death to a young child. So I encourage you to take a look at that. We also want to encourage caregivers to be an emotional role model so that it's okay to cry. It's okay to have all of your emotions. We don't act out our emotions by hitting and hurting others, but we can experience them. We can cry. We can talk about them. We can be sad. And then we can do something to help with our sadness, like coloring or art or running outside or climbing a tree or being in nature, things that we can do to kind of help us when we're feeling those strong emotions. We want to be attentive and responsive to the child's feelings. And again, respond to the feelings, not the behaviors. With that, I want you to know that there are several resources at the end that you could take a look at, a list of books, as well as resources like this book from Alicia Lieberman, the 0 to 3 link, also some Sesame Street links, Piplo Productions, some great books from there, a lot of other things about supporting young children experiencing trauma or who've lost a loved one. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my good friend Robin to take you through assisting caregivers and families. Robin.
Thank you so much. I echo everything you have said. So thank you so much for laying the groundwork, and thank you, Vibrant, for standing up this training. So I'm happy to be with you today. I truly wish it was under other circumstances. I have been very grateful to Vibrant for finding ways to assist communities that have been impacted by disasters. I'm also part of a program called New Day, the Network for Enhancing Wellness in Disaster Affected Youth. That is part of the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. And as Julia said, at the end of this presentation, there's a list of resources. And so there are NCTSN resources available to you. So we can go to the next slide. I'm going to be talking about assisting caregivers and families across the age span. Julia gave us a beautiful entry for the very young child, because sometimes we forget that they actually experience it too. To echo what she said, before we get started, we need to make sure that we sort of in a good place, that we are regulated. So thinking through how to make sure that we are calm. So if you're working with families, thinking through how they can calm before they start a conversation. There's a lot of discussion sometimes. Do I bring it up? Do I wait for my child or my teenager to bring it up? What do we do? And what we know from many, many different types of disasters is we need to bring it up. We need to be the one to start the conversation. So if you are supporting families, help them come up with words they can use. Help them think about how to start the conversation. Don't wait for the child or the teenager to bring it up, because they may be thinking, this is so horrible, I can't talk about it because my carer doesn't talk about it. So we can start the conversation, know what they experienced, and talk to them. There was this horrible flood that impacted our community. Or if you're in a different state, that impacted Texas. I'm in North Carolina, that impacted Asheville and the Western North Carolina. So what do we know? What did they know about it? Tell me what you've heard. Tell me what you understand. Because even if they've been through it, the other thing that happens with disaster are rumors and inaccurate information. So as they tell you about their experience, listen and gently correct misperceptions or inaccurate information. It may be things like, they knew a week ago and they didn't tell us. Or I heard that there's another storm approaching and they're not going to tell us about that one either. So if you know that some of the information that they're sharing is inaccurate, please just gently correct it. Encourage them to ask questions. Sometimes, honestly, I've been there, done that with teenagers. They shrug their shoulders and say, I'm fine, right? So sometimes we may change the question a little bit. There's been lots of talk about this flood that we've had. What are your friends saying? I'll share with you what my friends are saying, and that gives us some insight into how they're experiencing it and what their worries and concerns are. Okay, go to the next slide. The conversations we have with our kids should not be a one and done. We may talk about it and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it some more. One of the things we want to do is to validate when we check with them about how they're feeling, what they're thinking, to validate those emotions. Think about yourself. If someone told you, oh, don't feel that way, would that work for you? No, of course it wouldn't. And it doesn't work for our children either. So we need to acknowledge and validate what they're experiencing, what they're feeling. Because as Julia pointed out, it may be angry, it may be worry, it may be fear, it may be joy that at least our family was okay, and they feel guilty because they experienced some of that gratitude that their family's okay when so many families are not. And those feelings will change over time. And as we think about grief, there is no timeline for grief. And so for families that have experienced the death of a loved one or close friends or community members, family members, there's no timeline. And even though people in the family experience the same loss of life, even within the family, it may be expressed differently. And be mindful of that. I think about sometimes grief like a bag of microwave popcorn. We put that bag in the microwave, and the microwaves hit the bag all at the same time, but some kernels pop really fast, some kernels take a little bit longer, and some kernels really don't pop at all. So we may see that even within families. When we think about funerals, we have to think about, do I take my children? Do I not take my children? That is a family decision. There's not a right or wrong. The one thing I would encourage you is, if you do have your children, no matter what their age, at a funeral, let them know what to expect, what's going to happen at this memorial, at this funeral, at this celebration of life, if that's what's happening. Let them know what can be expected and what's expected of them, even if it's you're not expected to do anything, and you will see people crying, and I might cry too, and that's okay. We're together and we're okay. And I really like Julia's language, and we're safe. Even our teenagers need to hear that as well. I would encourage you, if you are bringing children to funerals, no matter what the age, have another adult that maybe is not as close to the person that died, so that if your child is having a difficult time staying in the service, that this person that you trust, that your children know, can take your child out to allow you to still have the time to grieve, and your child will be with someone that you trust and is safe. There are so many reactions that children will have after disaster. And I can't look in my playbook and say, oh, chapter 4 on helping my child knowing what to expect after a disaster. It's not there. So we need to think about it. At the end, you'll see some resources and some links that will spell this out a little bit more in depth. But we will have experiences that affect our bodies. So we may have our heart rates beating faster, our hearts beating a little bit faster. We may feel more clammy. We may have feelings of vague aches and pains, or as we experience this disaster. We may have cognitive changes. Your children will too, that they are having a harder time focusing. They will have a harder time concentrating. They will have a harder time remembering or learning new information, and you find yourself repeating it multiple times. So as your child asks a question, they may ask the same question repeatedly. It doesn't mean that they are trying to get on your last nerve. It truly may mean that they don't remember what you told them. So just repeating it in the same way at a level they can understand. So what you may answer a question for your 6-year-old will be very different than your 16-year-old. There will be different behavioral ways that children will react. And if I tell you that your child is having poor attention span, they're super active, they're not very well organized, they're more irritable, they're not getting along well, they're not remembering their chores, they're scattered. We've been conditioned that if your child presents with these things and they're super active all the time, they may have ADHD or hyperactivity. We've been told that by lots of pharmaceutical companies. But those are also things we see in children after a trauma, after a disaster like Texas has experienced. And recognize that you will have some children that already have been been told that they have ADHD and they've experienced this disaster. So it just makes those problems a little bit more. But know that most children that experience those reactions are not children with ADHD. They are experiencing this disaster. So know that those things look very similar, but medication is not what's needed. And in fact, medication is rarely needed to help youth after a disaster. You may see some spiritual changes. Why would God let this happen? Or a stronger commitment to their spirituality. Allow your children to guide you, and you can share your ideas and your beliefs about them as well. Next slide, please. When we think about how we can, I'm sorry for my kitty. I send her home, I send her off, and then she just pops back. So I apologize. When we think about media exposure, please, as a carer, think about how much not only are you watching or reading or scrolling through, but definitely your children, your tween and teen, and even your older elementary student child. We want to limit that exposure. Too much is not a good thing. So think about keeping your exposure small doses, and that includes scrolling through social media. There's lots on social media that fuel the rumors and make it harder for us to heal and recover and become more resilient. There are things that we also know that are going to happen. We will all have, including your children, reminders of the trauma, of the loss, and of changes that will activate some of those reactions. So just when things seem to be getting better, something will happen and they'll all come back again. The good news is that even after something as horrific as what Texas has experienced, what you and your community have experienced, most individuals, including children, will be okay. They will be resilient and they will heal and recover. The reason that happens is because of what we do. We don't just sit back and do nothing and say, oh, well, they'll be resilient. They are resilient because we provide the emotional support. They are resilient because we are there for them. We are there for them and we can help them move forward and cope. And that is why most individuals will be resilient, including children. I don't put resilience and responding to loss in the same category. If you've had a death, we don't bounce back from that. My goodness gracious, I miss my daddy every single day, and he's been gone for decades. But I can move through life without being overwhelmed as I was in the very beginning. So we think about the death of a loved one. We are not going to bounce back, but we are going to heal and we are going to recover and move forward. There are different activators that remind us of this disaster. If we took a poll of every single person on this webinar, on this Zoom link, about what kinds of things remind you of that trauma that happened with the floods, you'd probably give me all some similar things: standing water, rushing water, down trees, chainsaws, sirens, helicopters, boats, mud, floodlines, uh, debris. You'd all give me so many of those, and you would tell me that activators may include all of those things, as well as more rain coming, or alerts, or any of those things. We have some of the same trauma activators, and your children will have those as well. And we can know that they're there, and we can be better prepared to how to help each other when these come up. Loss reminders are unique to us. So if my if my brand new bike that I just got for my birthday got swept away in the flood, then when I see children out riding bikes, that's going to be a lost reminder about my bike. Um, if you didn't lose your bike, then seeing children ride bikes won't be an issue. If I experience the death of a loved one, then I will have things that will activate those reactions that I briefly touched on before in a different way. So, gosh, when the family got together, Grandma always made the best pecan pie. So now a pie is going to remind me of the death and the loss of my grandmother, but it may not be for somebody else. And then we have change activators. If you have to change where you live, if you have to change schools, if you have to change who you're even living with, those are going to be change activators. Maybe your child played soccer, but the soccer pitch was flooded and now they're going to get soccer back going, but it's at a different field. That will be a reminder of what has happened because of the floods. So we have to think about loss and change activators that bring back those reactions. And they will go up and down over time. And as Julia said, I will echo that we need to be a little more patient, a little more attentive, and giving that extra dollop of love is going to be important, whether they're 2, whether they're 14, or whether they're 18. We need to recognize that. Okay, go to the next slide, please. When we think about families that have had experienced the death of a loved one, sometimes their issues are a little bit different because with something that impacts an entire community like these floods, there's there's so much media around, there's so much attention, and so the loss is on public display. So if I want to grieve privately, it becomes harder to do. And it may be hard that I'm seeing other families that have lost loved ones that have experienced death, and their perspectives may be a little bit different. But the powers that be, the media that's covering this, the community that's coming out, sort of wants everybody doing the same thing, and it won't be the same. So we also find that when there's been death, that we tend to reassess our social networks. Who can I count on? Who will be there for me? Who do I need that maybe I didn't count on before that would be a good resource that I can count on? So there may be, for example, I never needed mental health services before, and now do I need them? I don't know. But if they're available, excuse me, check them out because they may add one added bit to your healing, to your recovery as you move forward. Okay. Next slide, please. If we think about how do we navigate, recognize that everybody everybody is going to experience grief and death in different ways, but we want to make sure that everybody's voices are heard. From those that are very out there and loud to those that are more withdrawn and quiet. Everybody needs to have a voice that is heard. Our children, no matter what their ages, need to have voices that are heard. And we need to make sure if there is negative media out there, if there are things that are making this harder for families, please think about providing some extra protection against that. And sometimes if somebody sticks a microphone in a family's face, it is okay to say, no, not right now. I really don't want to talk. It is okay. And it is very okay for you to say the same thing to your child. You do not have to talk to everybody that wants an interview. We can think about how do we want to share or what we want to share or who do we want to share with. Sometimes you may feel pulled to attend every single funeral that happens. That may be an impossibility. So how do we let the community know that I do care and I am touched by this. And this is what I can do today. This is what I can do tomorrow. And it may change. Next slide, please. We know for children there are many protective factors. Having a positive relationship with each other in a family is one of the best ways. Having a secure attachment, whether you're the very young child that Julia talked about, or whether you have older children. Having a positive family relationship, building that, being there for each other is one of those protective factors. Having good relationships in school, for kids that have good positive relationships with teachers, that will help, as well as for you adults. Having positive relations with coworkers makes a big difference. Good relations with peers, reconnecting with friends becomes super important. We know that for children that are involved in other activities at schools or extracurricular through their faith, through their culture, that can help build resilience, that can help with healing and recovery. And it is okay giving the message that if you need extra support, I will help you find it. Sometimes we don't know all the answers, but I know who I can ask that may have all the answers or may have more answers that I can add to this. Okay, next slide, please. We need to recognize that there are things that we can do that can make a big difference in terms of how our kids are going to manage. Sometimes we can think about how do we build those connections, how do we build those sense of safety and reduce distress. One of the things we can do is when our children, no matter what their age, does something that we would like to see repeated, does something well, even if it was hard, we let them know. Thank you so much for helping your sister or playing a game with your sister while I was filling out insurance papers. That meant a lot to me that you stepped up to help. Thank you for remembering to feed the cat. That I appreciate that. So sometimes we think, why should we give kids this praise for things they should be doing anyway? Remember back when we talked about what are some of those reactions? And one of those reactions was challenges with attention, concentration and processing. And so it is not uncommon for kids to forget the chores that they did regularly, to not think about stepping in to help. So when they do it, we want to say, I see it, I recognize it. And honestly, it means so much, even when you think, well, this is something they've been doing forever or something they should know. That should disappears after disasters. Kids of all ages often relearn. When we give instructions, we need to make sure that they hear them, that they can process them. So be direct. Please bring me your dishes rather than can you or would you or how about if you, because I don't hear that as you need me to do it. So we want to make sure that when we are talking to our children and we need them to do something, we are very direct. We tell them what we want them to do. So rather than stop running around, tell them what we want them to do. Please sit next to me. When we tell them what to do, they're more likely to do it rather than a not, which requires me to stop doing what I'm doing, think about what I'm supposed to do or what I think you might want me to do, and then do that. And while children, as they get older, can hold multiple instructions at the same time after disasters, forget it. I'm lucky I can hear one. So have that one done. Thank you for doing what I told you to do. Then give them the next one. Okay, next slide, please. Recognize, as we've talked about, that reminders or activators can lead to a spike in those emotional responses, those behavioral responses, and they come back. One of the things that often happens after disaster is our sleep. Children and adults, our sleep gets messed up. Even for infants, their sleep gets messed up. So don't be surprised if your children and you may have a harder time staying asleep or falling asleep. You may see more distress around sleep. And face it, if we're not sleeping well, it really trickles down to other places and it will come and go. Okay, next slide, please. We know that those of you that are helping children or helping other family members, we know that you will have stress reactions too. We know that there will be times that you will be activated if there's another storm coming, if there's reports of additional flash floods. If you hear, I'm telling you that people in North Carolina, um, when the devastating disaster that has hit Texas was unfolding, you better believe that the people in Western North Carolina had a resurgence of their activators because they remembered exactly what it was like for them going through that. So don't be surprised if there is flooding in California, that people in Texas are activated by that. So we need to recognize that when you see a body of water or anything related to one of those trauma activators, whether it is about the exact trauma you went through or similar, whether it is a reminder of losses, particularly around death of a loved one, um, and those change activators will bring back up those concerns and worries. Next slide, please. So I want to talk just a minute in the time that I have left about a new framework for self-care. As you are taking care of families that have experienced this devastating disaster, you are also going to be touched by it. You were part of that community, or you have come in to help out. And we need to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves so that we can best help others and help ourselves. Okay, so go to the next slide, please. This new framework is called the PRN model, and it comes out of the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, and it's appropriate for adults, no matter what, as they're working to take care of so many. So when we think about the PRN model, PRN from medicine is take as needed, right? Take that Tylenol PRN. In self-care, we think about the PRN. The P stands for pause, to check in, to take a slow breath in. And as you take that slow breath in, think about, where do you hold your stress? Is it in your shoulders, your neck, your stomach? Where do you hold it? In your head? Take a second slow breath in and think about, what are the thoughts that are ping-ponging around in your head. And then take a third slow breath in and think about what emotions may be churning inside of you to go along with those thoughts you're having. Frustration, anxiety, worry, anger, grief, loss. I think a mandatory movie for every parent out there, every helper, every paraprofessional, every first responder should be Inside Out 1 and 2. It gave us some ideas about feelings that we may have. And what you learned from Inside Out is that you can have multiple feelings at the same time. And so recognize that as well, but be mindful and be able to pause and be able to label those. Next slide, please. When we think about the R in the PRN model, the R stands for reset, to acknowledge that I am not at my best. I am a little off-centered. So what can I do to help steady myself, to calm myself, to feel more focused? It may be focusing on something positive. It may be scrolling through your pictures and find those pictures that bring you joy, that make you smile. It may be taking a walk. It may be petting an animal. It may be um, anything that helps you calm and steady yourself. And to give yourself a little compassion, what would you say to a friend or family member or coworker that told you they were feeling uncentered? What would you say to them? I think there is nothing, zero, nothing that was good that came out of COVID. It was a horrible time for the entire world. So there was no positive things that came from COVID. However, if there was anything that I would say, okay, maybe that's a little bit of something we learned from COVID because it lasted for so long and it uncentered all of us, no matter what our age, no matter where we lived. We all developed new coping strategies. We took coping strategies we may have used in the past and we built and enhanced those. So when you are struggling, when you are thinking about how am I going to get through this disaster, connect with what have you tried in the past? What could you use now? Can I take something that maybe I only have 5 minutes? So I may find that my faith is what got me through, and I may read scripture for my faith for a few minutes. It may be a mantra or an affirmation or a breathing exercise that I use. It may be watching something funny. It may be, again, scrolling through pictures that make me smile. It may be uh, finding something, some other ways that bring me joy for short time and for longer periods, and reconnect with those and give yourself that compassion that you so readily give to others. Next slide, please. And finally, I want to talk about the N in the PRN model, which is nourish. What do you do to nourish yourself, mind, body, spirit, soul, heart? How do you do that? So it may be that we celebrate those small victories. Today I got up and I made sure my children were fed. That is a victory. Today I filled out one out of a zillion forms. That's a victory. Today I got dressed. That's a victory. So we celebrate those small victories. If you have experienced the death of someone in your family, your community, or someone you worked with, how might you honor them? Maybe my grandmother loved animals. So as things settle down, I may find a way to honor her love of animals by volunteering at the animal shelter. My neighbor always had a beautiful garden and she died in the flood. So when I rebuild, when I move to my new place, I'm going to plant some flowers that I remember that she always loved. So are there ways that we might honor or commemorate someone who's died? You know what? When we share gratitude with someone else, what we've learned from gratitude is not only does it make the person we share it with feel better, it helps us. And the same is with helping others. So, although I may have lost everything and I'm cleaning up my debris, if I find a way to help my neighbor also clean theirs, we both feel better. We both do better. And I would encourage all of you to develop your own personal self-care plan. What's on my self-care plan may not be on yours. If you like to run, put taking a jog on yours. I just had foot surgery. I can't do that. So that's not going to be on mine. Does that mean I don't take care of myself? No, I put something else on my plan. And I encourage you to have something that you can do for your own self-care for small amounts of time or for larger amounts of time, and have a self-care buddy We know that if it's anything from healthy eating to quitting smoking to um, self-care, if you have someone that's going to check in and say, what did you do for yourself? You're more likely to do it than if you just try to go it alone. Disasters is not when we go alone at all. We always reach out and find that help. So I'm going to stop now so we have time for questions and answers, and I'm going to turn it back over to Amy.
Thank you, Robin. Really appreciate it. I want to acknowledge these important resources, 988 and the Disaster Distress Helpline. And then before we get into questions, just want to acknowledge that Vibrant's partnership with Robin and her team over at New Day. We are able to facilitate free, I want to emphasize the free component of that, in-person psychological first aid training and a slew of other trainings. So if that's something that is of interest to you, please reach out to either Jamie, the contact that's, or Jenny, I'm sorry, the contact that's placed there, or our team, and we'll be more than happy to coordinate that for you. So a few of you have submitted questions in advance with your registrations. We're going to address those in the time that we have. And then if we do have additional time, please feel free to use the chat for any follow-up that you may have. I'm also just going to ask my team to post the 2 resources that are, in addition, helpful for us today. So first question goes to both. How do best practices for post-flood mental health for children differ from those from other natural or human-caused disasters?
Sure. The good news is, independent of the traumatic event, again, most people do well if they have the emotional support and have resource available to them. So I think that's really important. There are differences between something like a flood that is through, it wasn't a person that perpetrated the flood versus, say, a shooting. So there are some slight differences in how we need to respond and what we do. The same big pictures that Julia pointed out for young children, as well as some of the big broad brushstrokes that I gave you, are going to apply independent, but some of the small things, some of the reminders may be different. So if it is a flood, then moving water and mildew and other things are going to be some of those activators for you. Whether, well, if it's a fire, it may be ash and the smell of smoke. So sometimes the activators may be very different, and some of the worries and concerns may be a little bit different. But the overall approach of how we support children, that extra patience, that extra attention, that extra love, and talking about it in a way they can understand is so critical.
Thank you.
I would
Yeah.
piggyback on that. The only thing that, the one thing that I would emphasize is the activator for this particular disaster may be one that happens more frequently in the lives of our young children, because it may be thunderstorms, rain that is an activator. And it doesn't mean they have to be anywhere near water. They could be in the middle of a desert with no lakes around anywhere, no rivers. But the fact that they hear the thunder or have rain, that's a naturally occurring thing with great regularity. So it's something just to pay attention to. And Shelter from the Storm has some great advice for that, which is another resource that's listed in our list of resources at the end of the PowerPoints.
Yes, and the Respond with Care is specific to disasters. So when we think about using that program after a flood, then everything is directed specifically to floods. It would be a little different if we were doing Respond with Care to a forest fire. So that changes, and I really encourage you to look at the resources that Julia, Vibrant, and I have put together that are going to be available to you, because sometimes all of us have problems when we're stressed with attention, and so the resources are there that you can look at now, you can come back and revisit, and you can process with your families that you're working with or with your own family.
And I just want to add that, I think the thing I love about some of the resources that Julia and Robin are mentioning right now, and the different links that we're providing, these are easily digestible resources. They're not long, lengthy papers with a bunch of they're actionable resources that are meant to be applied in the throes of recovery and restoration. So again, we have, I think, 3 or 4 slides at the end of this deck that we'll distribute to each one of you, and have highlighted the ones that we've referenced today as well.
And many of these are in English and Spanish as well as other languages. So check and see, because there are many languages that are spoken in Texas, but definitely almost all of these are in English and Spanish.
Yeah. So a specific question that came up as well is, how can we support children who, outside of the caregiver's knowledge, were exposed to, whether in the media or others, the impact of a disaster and is experiencing challenge? How do you navigate that conversation?
We are in a 24/7 news world. And so I'm often asked, well, my child didn't live anywhere near that, so do I need to talk to them? The answer is absolutely, positively yes, because they may have come into a room and seen it on the TV while you were watching. They may be scrolling through their social media. If they live somewhere else, people are talking about it on the school bus or at their camp or in church. So kids hear about it, even young children, I would say as young as 4 are probably going to be exposed to this, sometimes even younger. And Julia's comments about talking with little kids is important. So I think it doesn't matter where you are, talk to your children. If you are in Dallas, talk to your kids. If you are in Abilene, talk to your kids. If you are in Kenosha, Wisconsin, talk to your children. It doesn't matter where you are. When events like this happen, it takes very little for information to come out, and it becomes even more important to make sure you're listening for inaccurate information and misperceptions, because when you're away from it, that really explodes.
I think
Uh,
it's a good reminder for us to check our own behaviors too, because if we're glued to our phone, scrolling, trying to get more information, our kids notice that. And so we really want to kind of check in with ourselves. What are we doing? Are we being news junkies about it? Because let's face it, when I heard about it, I was impacted by it. I just felt the pain. And I'm a grown up. I can process this. And so one of the things is check yourself and see if you're seeking it out, because your kids may be picking up on that. The second thing for littles is, no question is one that should be dismissed. Instead of, oh, you don't have to worry about that, you can say, tell me more about that. Where did you hear about that? Oh, what are you thinking? What's going through your head? Yes, it's very sad. You know what? And we go back to those safety questions, safety comments of, yes, and mommy and daddy heard that. We will always check for flash floods, and we'll always make sure when we go camping to make sure that we're safe. We're going to do that as a family. You don't have to worry. And yes, we're sad for those families. Oh, you want to do something for those little boys and little girls that you heard about. What can we do? So giving them an opportunity to take action, whether it's drawing a picture and mailing it to,
First
Texas,
responders.
still doing something. So I let them take action if that will help give some resolution for them to feel like they're doing something. I know little kids who do lemonade stands to raise money, or find ways to contribute to someone who's doing a collection for families in Texas. So doing something actionable in that way to help can also really give a lot of relief for kids who are worrying so much about these families.
And that's true across the age span. It just changes a little bit because I have a better understanding of what it means when there are hundreds that have lost their lives. But it doesn't change the fact that we support them. And even that 15-year-old needs to know that you are doing everything you know how to do to keep them and your family safe. And they can
And
contribute.
to address what Paul just wrote on the comment, I just want to just real quickly say, Paul, is I would, again, when you create these open dialogues with your children, so that you're saying, what are you thinking about? And so that they feel safe in bringing up with you, and then you can address it. Where I don't think you necessarily have to say, today there was a flood in Texas, and introduce the topic to them when they're not even thinking about it. I would look for signs that they are bringing it up, that they are thinking about it before I discussed it with them, especially with young children. So,
For young children, I would respectfully say if you've got older kids that you know are on social media, if you've got older kids that are watching television, if you have older kids that that are going to be exposed to this, it is really critical that we bring it up. There's been several studies looking at different events, families that are willing to talk to their children about large scale events. That doesn't mean you have to tell them about every little thing on the news. My goodness gracious, self-care, self-care, self-care. Um, but if we don't talk to them, particularly as kids get older, they may not bring it up and feel like they're trying to protect you. Maybe you don't know about it.
and
So
I love, Robin, your question of your statement earlier of what have your friends been talking about? And it might come up in that, and then you can address it. I love that
yeah,
example. It's just wonderful.
if there, for example, is a school shooting, I know there was a shooting at such and such. Tell me what you've heard about it, because believe me, they're going to know about it. You don't have to take every single event because, yes, they are coming fast and furious, and we are exposed to them nonstop. So if it is something that is similar in your community, if it is something that you know that they're talking about, if you know that they have heard about it, please talk to them. If it's a giant event, think of the floods in Texas, think of a major school shooting, think of the wildfires at right now at the Grand Canyon, and your family's getting ready to take a vacation. Then that would be a time to say, there's fires out in the Grand Canyon. Tell me what you know about it. If they say, I don't know anything, just say, well, there was a fire, and fortunately, the first responders are there and they're making sure that everybody is safe that can be. And I know we're getting ready to go to the beach. And we're going to make sure that we know what's going on at the beach so that we can have a fun-filled vacation. So sometimes, um, if we're willing to talk about the rough stuff, as Julia talked about, if we are willing to talk about the hard stuff, then that means down the road, I can trust you with peer pressure. That means down the road, I can talk to you about disappointments. I can talk to you about happy things too. You're setting up conversations that will last a lifetime.
So I think we have time for one more question that I would love to just talk about. So obviously, these events happen in a isolated moment in time, but as we know, over the years, that reminder of that event and the grief associated with that event ebbs and flows, and people have unique experiences in that healing process and in those reminders. So could you both talk a little bit about what it looks like to touch base with a child year over year, perhaps in different developmental stages, when addressing, or what to maybe expect from a child as they grow and are healing or continuing to heal or coping from the loss that they experienced?
I do want to say that especially for very young children, and major losses, it does need to be revisited as they change developmentally. And so being able to have this open relationship where you can dialogue is so critically important. And it's like, even when you say things like, it's storming really hard today, a year ago, just about, and we had those big floods and we lost grandpa, and that was really hard. I'm wondering if you've been thinking about that, because I've been missing grandpa. And just it opens up the dialogue and allows the dialogue to go past. And you'll find that kids may have different questions as they age, because developmentally they have different needs, different wonderings. And we just want to make ourselves open to that as it comes. It doesn't mean we want to have necessarily a day where we bring everybody down by getting all depressed and being sad together. That's not the point. The point is really having an opportunity to be open, also looking for changes in your child's behavior. A child may seem like they've recovered just fine and are going about their business, and all of a sudden you notice that at preschool they're biting kids and pushing kids and getting very aggressive. Then one of the things to look at is what's going on with that child. How are they processing what happened? Are their needs for information different? Sometimes in our fear of not upsetting a child, we don't bring it up. And so Alicia Lieberman famously says, speak the unspeakable, bring it up, say it out loud, because that's what creates that open dialogue where the child can say, no, I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking about that. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Then, okay, well, I'm here if you need me. But if they say, well, why did he leave me? Then all the other kids have grandpas. Then you can start talking about that a little bit more. So it's just really kind of, again, creating an environment where we can pay attention, observe our children, and know that it may need to be revisited frequently. And by not asking, it creates a thing of, well, I'm not allowed to bring it up because I don't want to upset my parent as a child. And we don't ever want that. We want the adult to carry that weight of checking in on the child, not the child checking in on the parents. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
And I think for major events, you probably can think through some. 9/11, Katrina, the Texas floods will be one. That there will be a remembrance, and it will be all over the media. It will be in the public domain, so that will be there. That's a perfect time to revisit. But there's also times, holidays, particularly if you have experienced the death of a loved one, birthdays, special events like high school graduation, that grandpa died in the floods, and he's not going to be there at my graduation next year or in 2 years. So there are going to be those moments that come, and as Julia said, and I know we're out of time, so I'll wrap it up. It's not a one and done. It's a revisit in a way that meets the child where they are and what those needs are.
Thank you. I'd like to end our time today with just a loving kindness meditation. A lot of us are facing, and we saw it in the questions of what can I do from afar? And we wanted to, supply you with this particular reflection, prayer, meditation to end this time. So Lindsay, if you don't mind, head into that. We go to the next slide. And this is just an opportunity for you to wish and pray, whatever those words might be for you, to be hope and kindness towards the people who are suffering in Texas, people who are helping in Texas. So, Lindsay, if you can advance to the slide. What I'm going to ask you to do just with me, and we'll do this 3 times together, and I'll speak it, but would encourage you to speak it also to yourself. And the first one, I'd really like to think of the little ones who are missing a family member now because of this event. That we would pray this and wish this for them. The second would be for all of those who are responding to this disaster in an environment right now where there is a lot of confusion in how people get help. And then for each other here in this space who are offering support, so including yourself. So if you just place your hand on your heart, and I will guide through this prayer 3 times. First, to the children, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you know peace. May you live with ease. May you know love. To those responding, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you know peace. May you live with ease. May you know love. And now to each other. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you know peace. May you live with ease. And may you know love. Thank you so much for joining us today on behalf of Vibrant, Julia, and Robin, and New Day, and every one of you that joined us. We're grateful. Please stay tuned to additional resources. And again, if you are interested in in-person or virtual trainings of any kind that are available for free, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll be in touch. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Be well.